Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining Her Story in the Making for our third episode of the series. And I am super excited and proud to have a very special guest on tonight. She is a contributing writer to IBT Media, as well as an editor. Ariel, also known as @TrashSandwiches on Twitter. How are you doing tonight?
I am doing fabulous. Thank you so much for having me. Super happy and honored to be here. So thank you. How are you doing tonight?
I am good, except, randomly chasing a spider around that got into the office. So, guys, if you see anything weird on camera, it's because I'm chasing a spider. Just live TV things.
We've all been there.
Yes, right. At least I'm not setting the room on fire. That's the important thing. But guys in the chat, thank you so much for joining us. If you guys have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat and we'll get them put up on the screen. But we're going to go ahead and jump right in here. Ariel, where did your love of sports come from?
So I actually will be perfectly honest. I didn't start watching football until after I started playing fantasy football. Which is kind of the opposite of, I think, how most people get into it. I did not come from a sports family, just how it was. My dad likes soccer. So, he's happy about World Cup season and that's great. But I started through fantasy football. So I had some college friends. I had a league for maybe a year or two before I joined. They had a couple extra spots. I joined and I was like, okay, this is kind of cool. If I'm playing football or if I'm playing fantasy football, I might as well watch some games. So I started watching a couple games each week. And then it snowballed from there.
It is very addictive, especially if you have a competitive streak in you. Go ahead.
No, and so we had been playing redraft, and then when it converted over to Dynasty, I was like, okay, if we're playing Dynasty, I'll learn a little bit more. I'll try harder, whatever. And then that was really the tipping point, and that was, I think that was 2020 with the pandemic. And obviously I had more time and I started getting really, really into it. And then I was like, well, if I know all of this for one league, I might as well join another league and another league.
And it just snowballs. You can't say no.
Yep.
Once you're in, you are in and have to learn. And Dynasty is a completely different animal from redraft too. Mm-hmm. I know my first Dynasty league that I joined, I'm like, wait, what is this? I'm really still working on it. I'm too impatient for Dynasty leagues, but jumping in so soon after redraft is just really awesome. And you're very, very good at it too.
Well, thank you. I don't know how. I think I'm just having some weird luck, I guess. It's like almost beginner's luck, but at this point, maybe I'm not a beginner anymore.
I think you're great at it. I think you actually, you really know what you're talking about and catch on very quick.
My first year of Dynasty, though, I did awful. I came in second to last. So that was a big wake-up call because it was really different. And then I was like, oh, I need a very different strategy. I won the next year, so.
Well, yeah, then you made up for it.
Yeah.
On that Dynasty team, did you pick up an orphan or was it a startup from scratch?
It was a startup. Yeah, it was the same people from my home league that we just decided to convert over. And we've had a really solid crew for the last few years, really no turnover or very, very low turnover. So it's a good group. We're having fun right now. We're in hot discussions over changing the number of IR spots and taxi years and all of these things. And it's a home league. They're not good at bylaws. There's no bylaws. It's a hot mess.
Help them write a manual for their league, so now that you're a writer.
Know that I actually do a lot more with fantasy football.
Oh, a little ringer. I love that.
A little bit. One or two of them maybe knows that I do a little bit more, but I'm trying to keep it a secret so that I can just secretly kick their butts.
I love that. I love that so much. So when your redraft league started, was this a league that had already been going, or did you and your friends just kind of decide to start that from scratch? Did they need a fill-in, or was it?
Yeah, I think they needed a fill-in. I think it was year 2 of the league that I joined, maybe year 3, but very, very soon into it. And there had been a lot of turnover in those first couple of years. So that was, once we got it to Dynasty, then it started stabilizing. But it's a good group. It was nice to come in with, people that I knew and even as a beginner.
It definitely makes it more comfortable for sure, going into something that you don't really have much experience in, to do that with friends. makes the
Yeah,
transition a lot easier.
definitely.
But when did you realize that you wanted to branch out from more of a player to a content creator? Tell us about that.
Yeah, so being here today, being any sort of content creator, I 100% owe that to Seth Wilcock, our fearless leader over at In Between Media. So we connected just over a year ago. It was partway through last year, and it was one of those like Twitter posts that's a little engagement farmy, but like the good kind where they're like, shout out somebody in the industry doing good work. And I was just like, In Between Media, it's unique stuff. It's really cool. Like they're good people. So he messaged me. We started chatting a little bit, and he said, have you ever thought about writing? We're looking to add some people in the off season. Are you interested? And I was like, I don't know. I don't think I could do this. You don't even know that I can write. Like, sure, maybe we'll talk. So we started talking when the season ended, and then I started writing I think it was every 6 weeks in the summer. Now it's once a month, and then added on Pole Fantasy from there with the In Between crew. And they're just all super great. And like Seth is so supportive and encouraging. And truly, I would not have been here without that like very gentle but firm push of like, no, do this. And I'm really glad that I did.
Well, I think that I can speak for all of us here, both myself and everybody in the chat, that we are also very glad that that you jumped on and started creating.
Thank you. Thank you all.
But you have some exciting news in addition to IBT Media, and are branching out to a really exciting new site. So if you would allow us to break that news here, tell us a little bit about that and how you got started there.
Yeah, so I started about a month and a half ago over at Fantasy Life, and I am an editor over there, which is awesome, and it's really fun. And yeah, this is Josh found out and was like, we have to break the news. Thanks, Josh. Yeah, so that was also kind of one of those funny, like almost right place at the right time connections. I left my job, stable, full-time, real job a couple months ago. I frankly just like couldn't do it anymore.
Understandable.
Yeah, I liked the people generally and what I was doing generally, and it was just time to like have work-life balance again. So fun. And so like, I don't know, said something on Twitter about like, hey, I left my job and I don't know, I'm figuring out what I'm doing, but I'm unemployed. And Jordan over at Fantasy Life reached out and said, hey, I know you edit. Do you want to edit for us? Which was awesome. Jordan and I both went to University of Vermont. We graduated right around the same time. Like we were there for the same time. We never met each other, which is just funny because like Vermont is not that big of a state. And I feel like I know everybody in Vermont in a lot of ways. So that was cool to have that little connection. And super grateful for that opportunity. It's been fun. I don't know. I like editing.
Oh, no, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say I'm that kind of weird person that genuinely enjoys it. Like you had Faith on here a couple weeks ago, and I think she's the same. Like it's very nice and methodical. And you're like, I read this. I know how to fix it. It feels good.
Yeah, there definitely is a very different approach that you take to editing work versus creating content. Editors are probably the most important thing besides the content, because behind every good content creator is a great editor. Do you take a little bit of a different approach when you write things versus when you edit them for yourself and for somebody else?
100%. Editing, you're like, I read from the beginning and I keep on going through and I fix things. And if there's something really like troubling me how to rephrase something, I'll just like highlight it, come back later. My writing process is probably not the most conventional one. For me, the writing process, and honestly, any kind of creative pursuit for me, pretty much, it comes into my brain and it's like an intrusive thought where like, I'll just have the words and they'll just like spiral and spiral and spiral. And I'll be like, I need to write. And then I just sit down and write and it kind of flows from there. But like, if I start writing without those words in my head, my mind is just like, we're not doing things. I don't know what you're thinking. There are no words coming from this. So I need to have not just like the idea, but the words to start. And then it flows from there, which I think is really different. And sometimes it I kind of write like mostly in order of how I want it to end up. Not always, but mostly. Editing, you're like, I always go from the beginning to the end. I think some people do it backwards. That never made sense to me.
Yeah, I think that that would be difficult to start that, but I'm also a very linear person and again, the ADD, I will get lost if I don't start at a very specific point. So,
Yeah, focusing like to get through something, writing or even any task, like I can't do it on command. I do not start articles right before they're due. I will never finish them in time if I do that.
well,
I get it. It's just
that's kind of interesting because your writing does seem to flow very well. So it's surprising to me to think, that sometimes you don't have that inspiration for it when you sit down. And I really love how you weave together your real life stories and connect them to football. And guys listening, if you haven't checked out any of her stuff over at IBT Media, especially the Thanksgiving article, super enjoyable. Highly recommend going to check that out. It was one of my favorites.
thank you.
So how do you weave together your real life experiences and kind of tie it into a fantasy football perspective?
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting because sometimes it goes a lot of different ways. So sometimes I have the idea for the life story and I am like, I'll figure out how to connect this in some sort of kind of connected way to the fantasy football portion. Sometimes it like snaps and I'm like, oh, this makes so much sense. Like this is such an easy comparison or connection or whatever. And sometimes, I don't know, I guess those are the only two ways that it goes. Sometimes I'm just like, we're going to wing this and see. There are definitely sometimes when I get to that and I'm like, I don't really know how this is connecting. Maybe I'll figure it out. Maybe I won't. And that even kind of goes with how I do my player research. Like I play fantasy football on what is called a vibalytics approach, which some people may, look down upon, but it's gotten me this far. Which is I get the vibes and then I look at the data and I'm like, does this back it up? Yes, cool, great. If not, I'm not going to try and force it or anything. But I think, I don't know. So sometimes I'll be like, oh, I have this cool idea and it's going to connect the lifestyle portion to the fantasy football stuff. And this is a super great connection, whatever. And then I get to the player that I want to weave in and I'm like, oh, this doesn't work at all. This data is not what I thought it was. So I don't know.
I think that the vibe check, we talked about it 2 weeks ago with Linda on here. Sometimes, you just have to go with your gut and sometimes find the numbers to back it up or just go with it because of outside circumstances. How much do the vibes play into your takes or are you pretty analytical?
I think if I'm doing actual takes, like giving actual advice, the vibes are where it starts. It has to be backed up by the data. If I am just like managing my own teams or making DFS like lineups, doing parlays for myself, a lot of times it's just pure vibes. Like I do real dumb parlays and they often don't hit, but every so often they do. And I'm like, this was so many weird things. And I sometimes I'm like, some of these should not have hit, but I felt it and it went for it. Yeah, vibalytics, gutalytics, all one and the same.
We should teach a whole class on vibalytics. That would be a very interesting class. And I would so be down to take that.
Vibalytics. I don't know. You have to feel it.
Right. It's more of a psych class where you just listen to your feelings, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's like sometimes trusting yourself too. Like even if people, and I'm not going to do this when I give advice, but sometimes like even the other people, like experts and the data are like not where I end up going, but I'm like, I don't know. I just feel it. We're doing it. Sometimes it works.
It's that whole like he's due
yeah.
vibe. Well, he hasn't really done that this much, but he's due for a big game. Sometimes it works that way.
Exactly. And we're all playing for fun, or at least I'm playing for fun. So
yeah, absolutely. I think that once you stop playing for fun, then you basically should just stop playing. When fantasy football becomes work or kind of an arduous task that you want to work through, just step back from it.
Exactly. Although I will say I hate waivers. I made myself 2 waivers like just before I came on here, and it was the worst.
Oh, at this part in the season when the waiver wire has been picked clean, when playoffs are starting, we had so many injuries last week. It's brutal, and it just gets more and more desperate every week, I think.
Yeah.
But there's something else about you that I'm not sure that everybody knows. I think most people do know, but you have a really cool way of incorporating your love for football in with your crafting and making stellar things. It's at Stellar Makes on Twitter. If you guys haven't seen it, please check it out. The cutest, best looking beanies, scarves, things like that. How did that kind of come about, and how did you decide that you were going to incorporate your creativity with your love of football?
Yeah, so I'm a big crafter just in general, and knitting specifically, I learned to knit like in high school. I did it on and off a little bit in college, and I kind of had trouble like finding what kind of knitting I like to do. There's different kinds. A lot of people do like lace and cables and this and that, and they're so fiddly, and I hate them. I will not. And I started doing kind of right around or just before I got more into fantasy football, like color work knitting, which is just like goofy patterns. And I do a lot of hats, and hats go so much quicker than like big projects. I made like one blanket, one scarf, or one sweater, never again. And hats go quick enough, and you can like do fun patterns and this and that. And then I kind of was just like, wait, I could do like a team logo. And then it snowballed from there. And I'm super grateful to everybody on Twitter who has gotten anything. Knitting for me a lot of times is one of those like I just sit down and I watch TV or I watch the games or whatever, and it's like kind of nice and mindless. And so in a lot of ways, before I found like the fantasy football niche of it, I was like forcing my friends, being like, please let me make you a hat. I need to knit something. So
I love that.
Yeah. I have a few that I made because I wanted to, and I'm like, no one is ever going to wear this hat. I need to like give this away or sell it or do something. Just I don't know.
So did you start it with the intention of it kind of becoming this making stellar things, or was it just a hobby that people saw and they're like, please make me one, and then it just grew from there?
I kind of was like, hey, I can knit, and I want to do something more productive with knitting than just like forcing people to take hats. And it's fun to do commissions. So then I just kind of put it out there. Like I made a couple hats kind of as samples or whatever, and was like, hey, here's what I can do. Do you want a hat? And then got a bunch of orders, and it's been really fun. And I love doing the custom stuff because I get to design patterns, and it's really fun to see like what everybody wants. Like some people will be like, I want this throwback logo, and other people will be, I want stripes, or I want this thing incorporated. I'm like, okay, cool. It is sad when I have to say no to certain things, and I always feel bad. If I say no, please know that it is not because I don't want to. It is because there are limitations.
Limitations and time. You're a very, very busy lady, especially now with the new fantasy life gig.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to balance, and like I always tell people like I'm not a fast knitter, which I think some people are faster. I think I'm like probably below average, and also just in general, knitting is not fast. Like I will say it's solid 15 hours of knitting, and that's not like 15 hours here and there. That is 15 hours. Like it's a lot.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible. I love that so much. And just another reason that we love you. You're so dedicated and so talented. We heart you around here.
If I'm not fidgeting, I will lose my brain.
Yep. I understand that 100%.
Yeah.
It's got to keep the hands busy at all times.
Yeah.
Which I'm not creative enough. I just sit and play with my hair while I'm watching football. So
you should learn to do fun braids. I love doing fun braids. Definitely guilty of those. So it's a good one.
Well, send me some tutorials. I need those. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit here, and I want to talk about some of your favorites and maybe possibly challenges. So is there a favorite moment so far that you've had in your career?
Ooh. I guess one would be winning my home league trophy last year, just because like your home league always feels the sweetest, and I don't know, going from second to last to first place, being like, oh, maybe I am good at this. Suck it. I am trying really hard to get that back-to-back ship. You can kind of see in the back, I have my trophy there. I don't want to ship that thing. It's giant. So fingers crossed we get that again. I think the other one would definitely be Scott Fishbowl #1, just being invited to play. Like, that is a huge honor. I was so excited to get invited both times. Last year I made it to the semifinals. This year I am still in it and hoping to make it to the semifinals or past. And I think that's just been really cool. It feels really good to be like, for one, the charity aspect, for two, just a huge honor to be in this really cool tournament with all of these big name people. And for three, like, I don't know, winning feels good. And it feels nice to be like, oh, I made it to the top few of thousands. That's cool.
It's definitely a good feeling. And for those of you who are watching who don't know what Scott Fishbowl is the largest charity pro-am tournament in the world. It's all done for charity. Scott Fish does an incredible job shopping Toys for Tots and Christmas. Go check him out on Twitter and see all the wonderful work that he's doing with that. And
Side note, I think I cried at every single Toys for Tots shopping video that went out this year. There's been several from various people. I cried at every single one. It's so sweet and heartwarming.
And the bigger it gets, you know, the more that they are able to do with it. And so I love this inclusion of, you know, you and I, last year was our first year in Scott Fishbowl, and then seeing everybody else this year and just getting to know people and knowing that it's going to a good cause is really, really awesome.
It's really cool. And it's neat, like, having your little division. I've been in great divisions both years. And I don't, just the whole community around it, like having the potathon and the shirts and like the avatars and like all of those things. It's just really cool how big it is. And yeah, definitely anybody who doesn't know what this is, go apply, because you can't get in unless you apply. And if you apply, and you know, you can get in. It's cool.
It's like the Michael Scott mantra, right?
Yeah.
The Wayne Gretzky, Michael Scott.
Yeah.
You missed it. Yeah, exactly. Go apply to Scott Fish.
Yes.
But along with the ups, there always are challenges. We know how great winning feels, but how are some of these challenges, or what are some of these challenges that you've faced in your career, not only being new to the space, but being in a predominantly male-dominated field? And how did you handle those challenges?
Yeah, I mean, one thing is I do feel like I was kind of insulated and still feel pretty insulated a lot from like bias against women. A lot of people don't know who Trash Sandwiches is. Like, there were people who were like, wait, your real name is Ariel? What? Like, just found out very recently.
Your real name is Trash. Like, yes, that's your real name.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, so I think that kind of insulated me a little bit. I will say every so often, like, I just put things out there, particularly like anytime I say Deshaun Watson should not be playing, and fuck that guy. Sorry if I can't swear, I'm swearing for him. And yeah, just getting pushback around that, and it sucks and it feels bad. I will say, if you want to criticize my fantasy football takes, like, by all means. I got thick skin. I'm not perfect. We're all human. It's educated guess. No one can predict this game. It is a game within a game. We're all here for fun, or we should be. But people who come after you as a person based on your gender or anything else about you, like, that sucks. I will block you. You are a bad person. Like, I have no space for that negativity if you're being negative towards me or other people. And it sucks. It's shitty. I think we need to, like, really call out those people more. And it's nice to see when that does happen. And yeah, it's hard. It feels really personal, like, when people kind of go after you for that stuff. But
I wish that I had your thick skin, because it does feel very personal, and it can be very discouraging when you hear from a random stranger who is trying to invalidate your worth in 280 characters, especially when you're working your butt off to make sure that what you're putting out there is good content and a good product. I told Linda 2 weeks ago I was going to clip what she said. I'm going to clip what you said. I'm going to make little motivational posters of all of you guys' advice. But what other advice would you give anyone trying to create a career in fantasy sports?
Just do it. I don't feel like I know what I'm doing. I think there's probably some other people out there definitely who have the same like imposter syndrome. And again, like we are making educated guesses. We can look at the data till the cows come home and try and make the best educated guess possible. No one is going to be right, except that like we're all human. It's fine. And I don't know, just try and like do it because you want to, for the love of it, to just put yourself out there and go for it. I was super nervous. I'm still super nervous anytime I put out an article or even go on a podcast or whatever. And I'm just like accepting that discomfort. Maybe it was Toronto Dave, even something recently of like allowing yourself to feel uncomfortable about things. And it's hard sometimes and it's really scary sometimes, but put yourself out there. It is the Wayne Gretzky, Michael Scott quote.
100%. Then we've got a little comment in the chat. This is my first year playing fantasy. I'm the only female in the league, and they've all tried to play me, but I'm 11-3 and number 1 right now. These are things that we love to see. This is what Women of Fantasy Football and Fantasy Alarm all stand for: the inclusion, the kicking ass of, just women kicking ass, basically. And we love to see that. Keep up the great work. I hope you win that championship.
Yeah. Also, do an all women's league because I did my first one this year with you, actually.
And you're in first. And you are in first. Yes. Yes, we played each other last week. And I was like, oh, great. I'm gonna get another L, and I did.
Okay,
because you have just crushed that league.
So partway through that draft, I realized that I had way too many Eagles players on my team. I had like a few drafts going on, and I was like, oh, I ended up with Jalen Hurts, Miles Sanders, and AJ Brown. This is either going to go very well or very poorly.
Sometimes that works, though. I mean, it was a couple years ago back when there was the Dak, Amari Cooper, Ezekiel Elliott stack that just crushed in every single league. And, it comes with risks, but that's what fantasy football is. I think that if you play it conservatively, you're going to miss out on those big time high ceiling players, especially at ADP. And it worked out for you. And I'm going to say I'm very jealous as somebody who just lost to you.
Thanks. I didn't mean to
No, I think it's great. I love it because I'm just that team is unstoppable. So I really do think you'll probably win that league.
It is my favorite team out of 10 teams by far.
I love it.
But yeah, it's been good. And it's just fun. It's nice to play in a league with all women and have that kind of different good vibes.
Absolutely.
And the sneaky girls who are women of fantasy football.
Yes, future women of fantasy football and already crushing in every single aspect of
They're going to be all of our bosses someday.
Absolutely. I'm going to be out of a job when they hit, 18 or
we all will. We got 10 more years.
Yes. So since the show is called HERstory in the Making, and we just talked about the sneaky girls and what they have coming up in the future, how do you see your story shaping out in the future? And what are some goals that you are setting for yourself over the next few years in the space?
I guess the one biggest goal is to always have fun. The second I start not enjoying this, reevaluate, figure it out. And, I do think I have to cut back on leagues going into next year. Maybe a few too many. I want to always have fun. I don't want to take it too seriously. I think there are some people who take it really seriously. And I think it's possible to be serious without taking it too seriously. I can do my best to give good advice and try and play good teams and whatever, and try my hardest while also being sometimes you're just going to have every single player on your team just shit the bed. It happens. And not taking it too seriously and trying new things, saying yes. It's something that like I was really terrified to do. Writing articles felt a little easier because you can like wordsmith. Going on my first podcast, my second podcast, my third, fourth, like I haven't done that many. Every single time I'm like, oh no, I'm terrified. But I think pushing myself is something that I want to keep doing, and like just taking those opportunities because it's cool. Like you never know until you do it. And I don't love podcasting. I don't think I ever will, but I like trying it here and there, and yeah, taking advantage of the opportunities in front of me, trying my best, having fun, making cool connections.
Well, we are all huge fans of what you do. It's been an incredible joy to have you here on this podcast. And I'm so glad that you agreed, even if you don't like podcasting that much. I know that it was very difficult myself getting started in podcasting because I do tend to stumble over words and things like that. But
the like hating your own voice for me is a big one.
Yeah. Oh, I think that's everybody. Nobody really likes to hear their voice, but we are getting up against it. But thank you so much for coming on. Thank you everybody who watched and who posted in the chat. But before we get out of here, tell us a little bit more about your work and where people can find you.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Thank you for having me. It's been super fun. I write at In Between Media. I have my next column, which is a monthly column coming out next Friday. I also have a monthly video column, the next of which is coming out this Thursday. And I co-host that with Scott Rainier called Pull Fantasy. It's super fun. We do like fantasy football and football jokes combined with like pop culture, movie, and TV bits. Like put in clips. It's really fun. We have a great time doing it. So keep an eye out for that later this week, and everything over at In Between Media. Go read stuff. Fantasy Life. I may have edited it. Definitely check out the Game Hub. It's pretty new. They just launched a couple weeks ago. I edit all those game previews. But mostly that tool is super cool. There's all kinds of like the previews, matchup stuff, props, all kinds of great content. So go check them out and just all of those things. It's awesome. Linda was talking about it on hers. Like it's a free daily newsletter. It's free content. It's only going to make you smarter.
Exactly. And it's especially when you have great content writers and great editors like yourself behind the scenes on that. So thank you again so much for coming. We're all big fans over at Women Fantasy Football and Fantasy Alarm, and can't wait to see your content this week. For those of you guys watching, check out our next show in 2 weeks at the same time. We have Kelly Singh joining us, which is going to be another super exciting show. I can't wait for Kelly's awesome, and I can't wait to talk to her about her journey and her story. So until the 2 weeks from now, we'll see you guys then, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you.